The sun had barely begun to assert its dominance in the sky, yet the city of Naperville, Illinois, already bore the weight of a life marked by gray and rust. The police station, an island in this sea of despair, stood, an antiquated building, bearing the stories of countless lives within its weathered bricks. Jeremiah Bell, the middle-aged detective with eyes like a storm-tossed sea, made his solitary entrance, his figure swallowed by the station's foreboding embrace. In the dimly lit office, his desk was a portrait of his life, scattered papers marking his victories and losses, a faded photograph of happier times, and the incessant tick-tock of a weathered clock, a metronome to the rhythm of his existence. A fresh file made its way onto Jeremiah's desk. Detective Sims, a wisp of a man whose voice crackled like dry parchment, dropped it with an air of trepidation. "Bell, we've got something odd," he said, his words reverberating in the quiet. A local homeless shelter had fallen under suspicion. Whispers of money laundering whispered amongst the disenfranchised. "You've got the knack for the peculiar, Jeremiah." An ordinary case in the eyes of the department, but he could sense the undercurrent of unease running through it. The ripples had yet to reach the surface, but they were there, the aftershocks of a pebble cast into the still pond of his existence. A visit to the shelter was his first course of action. The building stood at the fringe of the city, a forgotten relic clothed in a shroud of silence, its past buried under layers of dust and time. Inside, he was met with a choir of lost souls, their eyes reflecting their stories better than words ever could. "Are you looking for something, officer?" a gruff voice asked, the gravelly undertone echoing from the walls. The shelter's supervisor, a man whose age was etched on his face, squinted suspiciously at him. "Information," he replied, his gaze steady, unblinking. "I have reason to believe something's not quite right here." A tense conversation followed, the two men circling each other with words and glances, the crackling tension a match to the flickering fluorescent lights above. Back in his worn-out Ford, a worn notepad sat on his lap. Scribbled notes from the day's investigation inked the pages, whispers of a story yet to unfold. As he drove back through the town, the scenery began to blur, the world turning into a dreamlike montage of life in its myriad forms. His mind, awash with 1,000 thoughts, felt an unexpected tug, an intangible thread, woven with curiosity and a sense of foreboding. That night, beneath the starless sky, he slept with the day's echoes rattling in his mind. But sleep brought little comfort. Instead, the whispers of unrest grew louder, transforming into spectral visions that danced on the stage of his subconscious, the curtain on a surreal play of horror about to rise. The days that followed in Naperville were cloaked in an uncanny silence. It was as if the city, beneath its gray skies, was holding its breath. Jeremiah Bell, swallowed by his relentless pursuit of the truth, found himself caught in the gossamer web of the shelter's enigma. A change had swept over him, its traces visible in the slightly bent shoulders and the clouded gaze that often lost itself in the middle distance. The visions, once confined to the realm of dreams, began spilling into his waking hours. Shadows danced at the corner of his eye, formless shapes that fled when looked upon directly. Whispers of unseen presences echoed in the silence, crawling beneath his skin, a silent symphony to his encroaching paranoia. A visit to the station's archives unearthed an intriguing piece of the puzzle. Nestled between moth-eaten files and forgotten testimonies lay the shelter's long-buried history. Reports of unexplained incidents punctuated its timeline, a hushed secret shared amongst the city's old-timers. "Jeremiah, this place, it's always had an aura about it. Stories passed down through generations," Officer Murphy confided, his normally jovial demeanor replaced with a wary apprehension. Jeremiah nodded, a slow realization dawning upon him as his mind became a battlefield of reason and inexplicable fear. Determined, he returned to the shelter, his resolve undeterred by the icy fingers of dread that brushed against his spine. In the shelter's basement, a place barely touched by daylight, he unearthed an unsettling discovery. Beneath layers of grime, Hidden symbols and cryptic inscriptions marked the cold stone, a testament to a time that echoed with a dissonant symphony of forgotten whispers. As he traced his fingers over the strange markings, he felt a tremor ripple through him. Reality blurred at the edges, the stone-cold basement melting into a dreamscape of cosmic horrors. He stood at the precipice of an abyss, his sanity hanging by a thread as he stared into the unending darkness. Shapes emerged from the void, formless and vast, a terrifying tableau that made his blood run cold. He stumbled back into the reality of the shelter, his heart pounding in sync with the pulsating dread that thrummed through the old building. He found himself shivering, not from the cold, but from the realization that the shelter was more than it appeared. It was an anchor, a tether between the world he knew and the horrors that lurked just beyond his understanding. Shaken, he confided his findings and experiences to Officer Sims. Their conversation, fraught with skepticism and disbelief, echoed within the precinct's cold walls. "Bell, you're chasing shadows," Sims sighed, concern etching lines onto his worn face. Jeremiah, his grip on the sturdy truth of reality slipping, could only offer a hollow smile in return. The world around Jeremiah Bell had taken a turn for the uncanny. Naperville, once familiar, now resonated with the spectral echoes of the unseen, its mundane facade shedding away to reveal a horrifying symphony beneath. Every step he took was heavy, burdened with the knowledge of the terrifying reality that lay just beyond his perception. And yet, despite the mounting dread, there was a purpose burning brightly within him, a beacon that refused to be swallowed by the darkness. His trauma, the ghost of abuse that had long haunted him, seemed to intertwine with his current nightmare, giving him the courage to persist. The visions were more intense now, their edges sharper, their forms clearer. They seeped into his reality, a spectral fusion of dream and wakefulness, mingling with the city's desolate backdrop. Faces of the unseen began to form in the corners of his eyes, nameless entities that pulsed just beyond the realm of understanding. His interactions within the precinct were strained. Once considered steadfast and grounded, he was now a question mark among his peers. His cryptic mutterings and distracted demeanor drew concerned glances and hushed whispers. "Jeremiah, you need to slow down," Officer Murphy pleaded, the lines on his forehead creasing with worry. The conversation was heavy, laden with unspoken fears and concerns. "And let this nightmare consume me?" Jeremiah retorted, his voice carrying a note of grim determination. The office fell into an uncomfortable silence, his resolve ringing clear through the tension. He continued to peel away the layers of the shelter's enigma, returning to the building time and again, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. He found himself standing before the ancient symbols, their cryptic nature seeming to whisper untold tales. Each visit intensified the visions, a vivid vortex that seemed to be pulling him towards a revelation he feared yet sought. It was within these walls he stumbled upon the unholy truth, a dark secret that the shelter concealed within its decaying heart. It was bound to an entity, a cosmic horror from beyond time and space. He sensed its presence, an omnipresent observer from a reality far removed from his own, its essence woven into the very foundation of the shelter. His heart pounded in his chest, the cold dread seeping into his bones. Yet amidst the fear, he felt an odd sense of connection, a terrible understanding that seemed to bridge the gap between him and the entity. The realization was shattering. The money laundering, the uncanny history of the shelter, they were mere fragments of a larger, far more disturbing picture. He stood in the eye of the storm, the echoes of the unseen entity surrounding him, its voice a deafening roar in his mind. The tangible reality he had always known was unraveling, exposing the unfathomable abyss beneath. Shaken and scarred, he retreated from the shelter. His world had been turned inside out, leaving him on the brink of an abyss that threatened to consume him. The dread, once a whisper, was now a scream in the silence of his existence. The world Jeremiah once knew had been replaced by an orchestration of dissonant whispers and ethereal specters. Reality as he understood it was now intertwined with an omnipresent entity that spun a chilling tale of cosmic horror. His nights were populated by fevered dreams. His days echoed with the haunting reverberations of the entity. Each heartbeat, each breath seemed tethered to the rhythm of an unknowable realm, his existence a fragile echo in the grand cosmic opera. Through it all, the presence at the shelter remained a silent observer, its ethereal tendrils woven into the tapestry of his every moment. It was a connection that terrified and anchored him, a paradox that held him captive in the icy grip of the unknowable. The precinct, once a symbol of order and logic, now felt distant. His colleagues, those who stood as pillars of his old world, appeared as blurred silhouettes against the backdrop of his new reality. Conversations were fraught with tension. Sims, his voice teetering between concern and frustration, implored him, "Bell, you need to let this go." Jeremiah's response was a faint smile, an echo of his previous self. His words, when they came, bore the weight of his transformation. "I can't. I'm a part of this now." Embracing the horrifying truth, he made one last visit to the shelter. He walked its corridors, each step reverberating with a dreadful purpose. Beneath the flickering fluorescent lights, he descended into the basement, the beating heart of the shelter's enigma. As he touched the cryptic symbols etched into the stone, the world around him shifted. He was no longer in the basement, but on the precipice of a sprawling abyss, the cosmic entity in all its terrifying glory pulsating at the center. It was a sight that dwarfed him, a panorama of incomprehensible proportions that simultaneously filled him with dread and awe. He reached out, and as he made contact with the entity, he was overwhelmed with understanding. The whispers grew into a roaring symphony, an orchestra of cosmic horror, its melody revealing the entity's ancient existence, its ties to the shelter, and his place within this grand design. A pulsating amalgamation of fear, understanding, and acceptance washed over him. His reality was irrevocably changed. He was a part of something vast, his existence interwoven with a cosmic entity from the farthest reaches of understanding. When he finally emerged from the shelter, he was a changed man. His eyes, once stormy, were now an ocean of calm acceptance, bearing the profound knowledge of the entity. The mundane world he'd once known was forever altered, replaced by a reality teeming with cosmic mysteries. And so Jeremiah Bell, once a detective ensnared in an ordinary case, was now a part of the cosmic tapestry, an unwilling player in the grand symphony of the universe. His narrative, forever interwoven with the echoes of the unseen, concluded not with an end, but with a transformation, a brave man forever marked by his brush with the unknowable. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to our channel, where you can find more similar stories, and click on the bell icon to never miss one. There is plenty more cosmic horror to come from the Eldritch Tales Factory. Stay tuned, and until next time.